Welcome back, folks, to the random video blog where every single Friday I give my thoughts in the wrestling world, share a few stories, etc., etc. But today is a very special video blog, and anyone who has followed the channel for a long time knows of this series. You never know who might be a wrestling fan. And I believe this upcoming week, or this past week rather, marked the 2-year anniversary of when I put up the first ever inaugural installment in this series, talking about how I discovered a teacher in my high school in the final few months of my senior year was a wrestling fan, one of the coolest teachers I've ever known, and he was amazing to talk to. And I talked about the whole story in the first ever installment. In the last 5 or 6 videos don't have to just do with friends and teachers and stuff, just people that I've met in person and have come across that were wrestling fans, so it's pretty cool to talk about. And I'm sure we all have, a story or other. I just have multiple stories, which is why I make this, video every couple of months. I think the last one came up in about August or so. This one's a little different. We're about 5-6 months removed from that, so I figured it was a little overdue to make one of these videos, especially considering the 2-year anniversary was this past week. So like I said, I feel like we all have these kind of stories where we didn't realize someone was a wrestling fan until we got to know them better, or we just come across someone either at work or at school or just in public in general that you never would have guessed was a wrestling fan. That's the beauty of wrestling. Anyone can be a fan. It's not the stereotype, like the toothless hillbilly or something. I don't know, whatever that stereotype is. I don't think it's as, true anymore, maybe down south or something, but especially not nowadays. With all the amazing people that I've met, through YouTube, you guys on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff, no one is really like that. No one really fits that bill. People are surprised sometimes. If I didn't wear wrestling shirts, like I'm wearing a Christian shirt right now, cheap plug, people might not even guess I was a wrestling fan. Some people hide their fandom, and that's fine. But the people that are proud of their wrestling fandom and show it off in public and stuff, also encourage other fans to do the same. So this particular person, I've been wanting to do this video blog for a while now. I probably should have done it a while ago, but better late than never. So, rewind, let's about 2 years now, to my freshman year of college. Like I said, I didn't really know many wrestling fans in high school. There was one kid, I'll probably talk about him at some point, that I had known even before I got to high school, who had moved to the same town that I did, from the same town that I did. I wasn't really friends with them in middle school at all, but we were friends in high school after we both discovered that we were mutually wrestling fans. But other than him, there weren't really many people that I talked to about wrestling in school at all, other than that one teacher in the final few months of senior year. There was one other kid, but that was about it. But college was kind of the same thing. When I got here, I wasn't looking for people that were fellow wrestling fans. I didn't really think the chances were too high anyway, because the older you get, the less people you're going to find that like the same things that you do in terms of wrestling, because it's kind of like a kid thing at this point, whatever. So I wasn't really desperate to find anyone that liked wrestling when I got here to college, and I started doing the radio show, WrestleRant Radio, in October of 2013. I did it by myself and had people call in from, across the country, people that I know from Twitter and whatnot, as guests starting that winter. But just because I didn't know anyone that didn't like wrestling, or I didn't know anyone that liked wrestling here on campus, rather, during my freshman year of college, it was kind of like an ongoing pursuit. Because my roommates, who I did room with for the first 2 semesters of the 2 semesters of freshman year, one of them used to be a fan. It was cool with me watching it. The other one was not a fan. It was kind of a dick about it. He meant well, but he was kind of an asshole, and I was very happy when he ended up leaving because he flunked out of school. Whatever. So that's what happens. Karma's a bitch. But anyway, I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, other than those guys, there really weren't many. A lot of people I knew either watched wrestling and or were cool with me watching it at that time, but they weren't currently fans. So the chase or the search continued until about March, during which, at one point during one of my classes, it was a blogging class, and I did mine, obviously, on wrestling, because it's what I know, and it comes easier to me. So I did it on, how to become a professional wrestler, and the teacher was aware of that, so I brought it up to him, and he called me out in class, not in a negative fashion, but everyone was going around talking about their blog topics, so I, came around to me, and I talked about it, like how my blog was about how to become a professional wrestler, this, that, and whatever. So then after class, one of the kids who I wasn't really friends with, but I was aware of, and he was a really cool kid, came up to me, and he told me how his roommate was a wrestling fan. Or at first he asked me if I had the WWE Network, at which point I said no, because although I had technically been watching the network through a friend's account, I had yet to buy it myself. And I asked him why he asked, or how he even knew about it, and he said his roommate was a wrestling fan. So fast forward, it might have been the next day or the following week, I'm not exactly sure on the timeline, I'm at dinner and I see some kid walk in wearing a Daniel Bryan Yes shirt. You know how like the Change, Obama shirts, that same format. That very popular Daniel Bryan shirt from a couple years ago. And of course, it was one RJ Marceau, who I've talked about multiple times, countless times, along with John here in the video blog. And a very good friend of mine to this day, and I would later have him on the WrestleRant Radio talk show. I thought it was going to be for one night. He ended up staying on. He's still my co-host to this day. Great friend of mine. And even now, now that we live closer to each other, I'm in my dorm right now. His living space. He's a senior, I'm a junior. His living space is right next door, so I go over to his place every Monday night, and sometimes for NXT and SmackDown, and especially the pay-per-views, to watch Raw and all the WWE shows with them and stuff, and it's a really good time. So, and that turned into a really good friendship. So you never know who you might meet on your college campus, like I said, at work, in public, wherever. And it could turn into something a lot more than what you would expect. One casual wrestling conversation could turn into a lifelong friendship. So you never know what might happen. So always be on your toes, especially if you're someone like me and you're in college currently and you don't know if anyone likes wrestling and you're kind of afraid to wear wrestling shirts out in public. I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. Like I've talked about before, you don't have to be embarrassed because there's other people out there that are doing that. And him and I kind of started this, not revolution of sorts, but I started noticing other people wearing wrestling shirts out in public, people in college that I'm not really friends with. People have come up to me and asked me about it, knowing I'm a wrestling fan, not making fun of me for it, but asking me wrestling-related questions, which is cool. So had I not done that, had I not started wearing my wrestling shirts out in public, as did RJ a couple years ago, other people might not be doing the same thing. So it's cool to kind of start a trend and kind of getting other people doing the same things. You really have nothing to be ashamed of. It's wrestling. It's no different than liking anything else, whether it be a comic book or, whatever. I feel like the term nerd is kind of no longer what it used to mean from many decades ago. It's kind of like a positive term of endearment, I feel like, by this point in 2016. But you never really know. Who might you find, might discover to be a wrestling fan if you wear your stuff out in public? And like I've said multiple times in the past, if anyone judges you for liking wrestling or wearing a wrestling shirt out in public or this, that, or whatever, doing a project on wrestling in one of your classes, if anyone judges you for it, doesn't want to be your friend because of it, then they're not fucking worth your time. Those are the people you don't want to associate with, because if they don't like you for you, which at the end of the day, which is most important, if they do not like you for you and you can't be yourself around them, then they are not worth your time or friendship. So don't bother with those people. Even the people that aren't wrestling fans but accept you for who you are the people that are worth your time. But going back to the whole basis of this video, you never know who just might be a wrestling fan.